Hello and welcome to A Life of Creation. My name is Chad and I am the host of this channel. If you like what you've seen so far, please like and subscribe. Hit the notification button so that you know when new videos are released. Today we're talking to set designer and prop stylist Jason Jensen.
Well, I mean, and this is, I think, something that you can also get at, what's human nature, right? Like, if we didn't have to exchange our labor for food every day, would people just be creative people all the time? I mean, I think you could make the case that maybe some people wouldn't,
Right.
but I think that you could make the case that a lot of people would probably make things. Just because that person is accountant at their job, I mean, doesn't mean that if they didn't have to exchange their labor, for food every day, that they wouldn't choose to do something else.
You had touched on it earlier, I think in your creation section was, you can go back to early civilization and be like, this guy has a knack for hunting animals. This guy has a knack for gathering fruit that won't kill us. This guy can start fires anywhere. If you didn't have, the monetary needs, I think you would actually see people move into all of these areas that we already have because
Yeah,
that's their natural instinct. Like there are people who are just naturally really good with numbers, and
yeah.
there's people who are insanely organized. And then there's, the very free spirited people who, will provide ambiance, to the
But
rest of
we
us.
we also we don't really know because as a species, we haven't had a lot of experience with people having enough leisure time to just do what they would want to do. For most of at least this millennia, you either worked or you starved.
Well, all of history.
Well, I mean, yeah, but then the guys that were making cave paintings, like obviously they had enough time to do that,
Right.
or some of them did. But I guess my point is that we don't really know if everybody, left to their own devices I mean, maybe we would just make beautiful things if we were given the opportunity to. And wouldn't that be a great world, you
Right.
know? Whether you were divinely inspired or inspired by, the floral arrangement on your table, great. I mean,
Right.
use that in some way, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe we could build ourselves a better world if we were just, allowed to do that.
I feel like history would say that we would probably go the opposite way and just start killing each other, but
We got to be a little positive these days, Chad.
but I think you're onto something because I think there's definitely those people who don't give in to their passions for creation because they feel like they don't have time because they got to do all this other stuff. And those are the
I
people.
would, I would, I would like to know if they did some study, the number of artists in the history of the world that were successful. Um, a large number of them were from affluent backgrounds, a good percentage of them,
Right.
right? Not all of them, but certainly more so than the ones that were from not affluent backgrounds.
Right.
Or at least they were from a background at their time that allowed them more leisure time than the
Right.
rest of the general public, right? I would love to know what that percentage is because that would tell you, or at least start to tell you, well, given the opportunities, more people than not will try to create things, not.
I don't, I wouldn't say I know a lot of artists, but I did read a Van Gogh biography, and he certainly was not successful until he died, really.
Right,
So I think you would have those people. I think you would have the extremes. You would have the people who just lived in poverty and just created because they didn't know anything else or couldn't think of it doing anything else. And then you have the
right,
people who were allowed the time to just hone their craft and
right.
take their time learning and doing it proper, learn the theory and all that kind of stuff. So that would be an interesting study because I think you would
But
have the two opposite sides, and then you just have everyone who's just like, I'm just trying to live and feed my kids.
And that's the world we live in. And
Right.
I want to say we should try to live in a world where we let everyone create, and whatever we have to do to get ourselves to that world, that's what I would hope for.
I think a lot of it is just also training people's mindsets to give them a way to know that they are free to pursue some of these things that they are passionate about. Like a lot of people spend a lot of their evenings doing stuff. Like I start working when my kids, go down around 8:30, and
Right,
that's my time to try and knock out projects. Um, or read or do something like that. Like the book I'm reading, it talks about nurturing these, you know, callings that you're feeling. Like you are feeling like you need to be a writer, you should be writing. Or if you
right.
feel like you should be painting, you should be painting. And I think it would be important. I mean, a lot of it is what you were touching on is creating time for people to do it too.
You know what would create a lot of time for people to do that? If we changed the dominant economic system for the majority of the world. Like if you didn't have capitalism, if you had a system, an economic system that allowed people more time, then I think that you could get to a world where they would have those opportunities.
I do actually like capitalism and free markets. And I know there's, the evils in it too and all that kind of stuff. But I think you always like there's something to be said about the businessmen who that is their calling.
Their
Their
craft, yeah. I guess when I say that the dominant form of, you know, the economic system that we're dealing with, I'm more talking about in the sense of the exchange of labor. Like so many people are so obsessed with how they have to exchange their labor because that means food on the table. That means feeding their kids, taking their kids to the doctor, these
right,
things. And the exchange of labor really is the most dominant thought of anyone's day.
right,
I mean, that's what it comes down to. I mean, that's the majority of what we think about is our exchange of labor. And so I'm, you know, not saying that we need to live under some sort of like, you know, Soviet style communist like world, but it's more about like changing the thought process behind like if you're a creative person, you know, or even if you're not a creative person, could you nurture that if your day just wasn't dominated by the thought of exchanging your labor on the free market to the lowest bidder? And
well,
that's what so many people, that's what their day is dominated by.
right. There's the idea of entitlement and you know people are owed a certain level of living. They start expecting more than what their occupation would typically be given.
Right,
Like I think everyone should be able to afford homes and all that kind of stuff and food and doctors, but we're a society of consumers, so if we can't
yes,
afford things, we think we're not being treated right. But it's
right,
like, but the things that we should are trying to consume are luxury items and
right.
90% of the world. Basically, there's a lot of, not just one thing that needs to be it's a mental thing too that we need to be hurdled. There's, the problem with greed, and there's extortion and, taking advantage of people.
What I'm just trying to make the case for, right, is that like we've never had a world where the human race gets to try to be a creative race,
Right.
like a species that's creative, because our entire human history has been based around this idea of this exchange of labor, right? Like, I mean, it's really what we've been bred for millennia to do.
Right.
Um, and so I think it's less about, in my mind, like entitlements, or like less about kind of like the specifics of it, and more in the sense of like, how are you building a world where you're actually trying to like pursue the things that actually makes us different than the
Right.
rest of the animals,
Right.
which is our ability to, I mean, reason for sure, but
Right. Right.
to think
Create. Yeah.
creatively.
Right.
And I think one of the biggest impediments to that is the exchange of labor. And
Right.
so if you were to find some other way of doing that, and I don't know what that is, I'm not
Right.
saying that it's any, maybe it's not even like a dominant socioeconomic system that even exists today. Maybe it's something
Right.
different. But if you had a world where that wasn't the case, um, maybe all of us would just make beautiful things.
Right. Or just figuring out a way to where, people can do what they're called to do.
Yeah, sure. And it could be the businessman that maybe that's what he's called to do.
Right.
And there's nothing, I'm not saying that he shouldn't do that.
Right.
I'm just saying that he shouldn't feel like that's the only thing that he has to or
Right. Right. Yeah.
can
Yeah.
do.
If he feels like he should be a writer, try to be a writer.
The CEO should be given the option of being a painter.
Right.
He shouldn't feel like his only option. I know I'm defending CEOs of like America, but I'm like,
No,
he
but
should
it's
be given the option of like, if he wants to go, you know, make a folk record, like he
so
should be
be
allowed.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, that's kind of what that book, The Artist Way, I mentioned earlier. It actually talks about some, people that gave up on all of their dreams to pursue things because they had a knack for stocks or, whatever,
right.
and or their parents already had the business going, so they just kind of fell into it, but they really wanted to be, such and such or whatever. And there's times I think the book is just like, they should just abandon their successful job and just be if they just do writing, they'll be successful. But I think it's
Right.
more just getting at the fact that, you know, allow yourself the opportunity to do these things.
Yes.
Whether
And I
it's
think we as a society should allow people to do that.
right. And that was it was, they were talking about carving out time to write
Right.
and to pursue the things that actually bring you joy. And I think what you're getting at a little bit is, there's so much pressure on, making money or doing this stuff that people forget to pursue the things that actually bring them joy. And that's why so many people are miserable. And like we talk about in other videos too, is like creation, that the act of creation is such a mental health thing too.
Yeah.
It's like if you're not able to allow yourself time to do some of these things, it's you're going to be miserable.
Yes.
And so I think too, figuring out a way for people to pursue some of these things would actually help the mental health issue that's, we're plagued with at this time too.
I agree. Yeah.
So,
I mean, imagine if, we have like maternity leave or something like that, right? Not that we even do that well, but like, we have some version of it here in this country. Um, imagine if you could take like a month a year and just be like, I'm just gonna go do this creative thing that I wanted to do.
right,
Um, and you wouldn't have to worry about, you know, your job.
right.
Um,
Like you have a job when you get back.
yeah, and how much more fulfilled you would be, you know?
Right,
And this is kind of a micro version of kind of what I'm talking about, but I think that like these pressures, um, for a lot of people make it so hard to pursue those kinds of things,
right,
right?
right. I know the church has pastors do sabbaticals
Right.
where they, you
Yeah.
know, you take I don't mean I don't know if it's a month or some may even be like a year. Like you take a year off
Yeah,
and just, research or read, do what you want, just rest and
right.
step out for a little bit. Something like that in the secular world too, it could be beneficial where it's like, all right, I know like the Europeans, have like the holiday, like everyone just takes off for a month. Go
Right,
travel, go do, go see the world or whatever.
right.
I know America is usually lower on that spectrum of
Yeah.
abilities to do that. They're getting
I
there.
mean, listen, we're better than we were, right? I mean, we've made progress and it can only keep getting better just in terms of that,
Right.
in the long view of it all, right? And my hope was that it just keeps getting better.